the penultimate episode, a lot happens, and I
All
probably, the initial outline, I probably pushed it a little too far. Originally I had so many more people die. Uh, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was, it was it was while we were shooting, and so, a lot of more level heads prevailed, and Jake and the network and the studio, they're like, "Son, are you okay?" I took a step back and I'm like, "All right, you guys are right. And
Right.
not everyone should die." And so we walked it back, and I started focusing more on character about, all right, well, what is this ultimately about? And for Danny, it's really about his relationship with his brother.
Right.
And for Amy, it's about her and George. And so really focused on that, and that helped kind of bring that ninth episode together.
Where's your gun?
I don't know. I lost it.
How do I know you're not hiding it? Huh? Because you're a pathological liar.
Because I would be shooting you with it, you moron! Hey, come back here!
No. Use nice words!
You called me a liar.
I am not helping you unless you use nice words!
All right.
There's a hospital by the highway exit. I bet they took him there.
You don't get to talk about Paul, all right?
I was just trying to help.
If I'm gonna carry you, you don't get to talk, period.
Whatever. God, there is no service anywhere. What am I going to do? If he thinks he can just take her away from me
Please
like
shut
this...
the fuck up, okay? Are you sure we're going the right way?
Yes, I know where I'm going. Head towards those trees.
Which trees? They're all
The
trees.
ones I'm pointing to, dumbass.
Oh my God. It feels like we're going in circles.
Well, we're not, okay?
Okay?
Do you have anything to eat?
Yeah. Hold on. Oh.
Oh, thanks.
Here you go.
You are such a dick.
Ow! Why'd you do that?
Welcome to Behind the Lens today. Well, he is nominated for a lot of Emmys. His show Beef on Netflix is up for Best Limited Series or Anthology or Movie Made for Television, all in one category there. Nominated for 13. 3 of those nominations have gone to him for producing, directing, and writing. And boy, that's impressive. Welcome, Lee Sung-jin.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is something I don't know that you anticipated when you sat down to write what really was probably the most personal thing you've tackled in your career.
Yeah, no, I'm just even thrilled that people like it. Like when you do something really vulnerable and you're kind of showing your insides, you just hope no one's like repulsed.
Right.
But to be, recognized by our peers, that's really wonderful. And to see everyone else like Stephen and Allie and Young and Joe, so many of the artisans that have worked on the show get nominated. It just makes me really proud.
Yeah, and it's like you are nominated for in the writing category for Birds Don't Sing, They Screech. That was the episode 1.
Yes.
And you're nominated very first time you've ever directed, I understand, right?
Yes, yeah.
And you get an Emmy nomination for your first directing gig.
Yeah.
On the finale.
Yes.
Which is pretty damn good.
Yeah, that shooting that finale was such a whirlwind. It was towards the end of the shoot, running out of time and resources. I had to write that script while we were shooting. So it was such a blur. I feel so thankful that there's even something to present to the world.
Right.
The being nominated is just such a cherry on top. And truthfully, like it really, I had the best training wheels you could have as a first-time director. Like producing director Jake Schreier, who's one of my dear friends.
Right.
To have him on set, just it feels secure. And Larkin, our DP, and Grace, our production designer, I mean, between those three, like it's really hard to mess up. And so, yeah, no, it was about as a great of a intro into directing as one could have with
Yeah,
them.
the director's branch really looked at this show in particular because it got 2 nominations for
Yes.
directing.
Yeah.
Jack Schreier, who you just mentioned,
Yes.
also did, which is really great. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jake's such an incredible director. I've been picking his brain about directing for the last like 5 years, and to finally work together on something. I mean, we worked together briefly on Dave. He did the first episode of season 2, but to actually work on something for a long period of time with him, it was a blast. Like to get to work with one of your dear friends. It's like what you dream about as a kid.
Exactly. Those 2 episodes I mentioned, the first one and the last one, are mind-boggling to think of the journey that
Yes.
these 2 people take
Yeah.
to a very chaotic ending
Yes.
and crazy times and all of that. Did you have this all in your head when you sat down to conceive of this show?
We did know the ending pretty early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I pitched the show, we got a straight to series off a pitch, and so when I was pitching it around town, I do these kind of elaborate PowerPoint presentations with like storyboards and photo.
You're like Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, please.
Spell it all out, sit in the trailer, and let them go do the
Yeah,
thing.
sure. No, my Photoshop skills are like not that great, so it's a little like rudimentary storyboarding. But I really want to take the buyer through a journey from A to Z, really, and so we knew the ending. The hospital bed is actually something Ali Wong came up with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
because
That was actually brilliant.
I agree. I mean, kudos to her.
Yeah.
Because we were on a Zoom and we were trying to. I knew what I wanted feeling wise for the end. Just kind of, that you're almost like returning home and you feel like safe and vulnerable. Like no judgment. Really unconditional love. And we weren't sure how to convey that. And we were on the Zoom and Ali just pitched. She's like, well, what if she just crawls into the hospital bed? And everyone was like, oh my God, that's perfect.
It sounds so simple.
Yeah, it was so minimal, but it says so much.
Yeah.
And so, we knew that as the ending. That just helped so much as we started the writer's room to know where the destination we were heading. So we could really pace ourselves in getting there.
It was such an interesting idea. I know it's based on your own life in a sense.
Yes.
Like you're driving along, getting a version of road rage,
Yes.
and say, instead of like stopping and going and knocking on the guy's window, you come up with 13 Emmy nominations.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's my kind of road rage.
I know they you got to live life to be able to write. Yeah, I've been my notes app has been very helpful for me in my career. Anytime something weird or extraordinary happens, the first thing I do is I'm like, thank you, and I take out the notes app and I just write stuff down. And you never know when, that was sitting in my notes app for quite some time, and it wasn't until I caught up with Ravi Nandan, who's the head of A24 television, that I just started telling him this road rage story, and he was the first person that was like, oh, there's something there, you need to explore that, go dive into that. And so you never know when these little memories can turn into something.
It's amazing. You mentioned A24 TV. They're amazing, that
Yes.
company. I mean, considering all these different things, they've obviously won all these Oscars with Everything Everywhere All at Once. This year, I just saw Talk to Me, which is
Yeah, I
just
hear
like
that's great.
these 2 great Australian brothers directing. They really find talent
Yes.
there. I just saw a trailer for their first musical, which
Oh
looks
yeah.
totally wacko.
Yes.
But that must be a very creative place to go and pitch and have them understand what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Ravi and Ali Reich, who was an EP on the show. They were really our 2-point people creatively when we started developing the show. And there's really, they're very, they trust you. They if I want to go down this weird avenue about Korean church, neither of them have attended Korean church, but they can sense that that's something that's passionate for me, and so they let me go places. And their notes are never prescriptive. They're really just, their personal reactions to things, and I can take it or leave it. And so everything's a discussion. And I think, having that when you're starting, it just lets you be pretty free. You're not worried about how this person, how we're going to set this up. Right. You're just worried about the story. So having them on board to start was so helpful. And then, we ended up at Netflix, and the drama team over there with Ginny Howe in charge, like it couldn't have been a better group of executives. Irene and Ginny are both Korean. And so like there was such a shorthand that I've never had in my career where, I'm like talking about, we're talking about like the type of pastries that are after church, Korean church, and they get it all. And they're like, they kept pushing me to be more specific. There's this one line that I cut at the end of, I think it's episode, I want to say it was episode 3, when Danny's playing Incubus Drive. And I found with a lot of Koreans who attended church, they always played a Taylor 7 Series guitar with Elixir strings. And so when I told that to Steven, he was like, oh my God, like I did that. I had the Taylor Series guitar as well with Elixir strings. And so we actually had a line where he says like, hey, are these Elixir? Never mind. And then he just starts playing. It didn't work with the edit, but when I wrote that in, I thought for sure someone was going to ask me to cut this because it's so narrow, It's like, like 35 people are going to get that joke. But, our executives, they got it. And they were like, keep it in.
See, that's it. And that kind of detail is what, helps it be unique.
I think so, yeah.
And, amazing. Stephen Yeun, Ali Wong, all nominated, all deserved. Supporting cast, fantastic as well. They are also executive producers.
Yes.
And we're in this from the beginning. How is that helpful on a project like this to have your 2 leads that involved?
It was immensely helpful. We're all really good friends, and having them to just be able to call at any hour of the day. I mean, there were times when I was putting that pitch together where I'd call Steven at like 12:30 in the morning. I'd be like, hey, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know what Danny's would do here. And we would just talk for like 2-3 hours. And, when do you ever get that with like your leads?
Never. You're lucky if you can get them to rehearse.
Exactly. So that back and forth, that was instrumental in not only crafting their characters, but the show at large. I feel so grateful for that camaraderie. I know that it's so rare, and so we're all just trying to hang on to that. Even after the show is wrapped, like we try to get dinner once a week, So it's been a really lovely collaboration.
This show is so many things. I couldn't quite predict where it was going to land in Emmy categories. It's hard to categorize. It's half hour, so that doesn't make it a typical limited series movie type category. It's a dark comedy, but it's got so much more than a comedy series. I mean, you've worked on several sitcoms and comedy series, and this goes, way deeper. So it is a drama. It's all of those things. And isn't it great to have something that you can't easily pigeonhole?
Yeah, I mean, all my favorite stuff is exactly that, and I grew up loving like PTA and the Coen brothers and like Director Bong and
the best.
It's such a mix of humor and thriller, and there's just all sorts of things. And so I wanted Beef to be that. And when we initially pitched it, we did pitch it as an anthology series, so that every season is a new Beef with new characters. And so I think I pitched maybe like 3 seasons worth of other Beefs. And so we'll see if that comes too. But so being able to be in limited with other shows that are more dramatic leaning, with some of those other shows have comedy in it as well. So it felt like the right category.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you want to continue it on as an anthology, because I think it's universal, and I think this is very significant and relevant for our times.
Yeah.
The feeling of isolation,
yes,
of loneliness, of division, of rage, of ultimately a lot of different things that you get out of this.
Yeah.
Would apply beyond the Asian community to many other communities, many other types of people out there,
Yeah, definitely.
in different ways.
I mean, every day when I walk out of my home, there's just beefs everywhere. You know,
What is it about this world we're living in, man?
I don't know. I don't know. It's I think you know, this life is just a curriculum to figure out how to exist separately but yet together. You know, and it's something that we're constantly trying to figure out. And I think that's why so many of our stories reflect that. And you know, and I think doing it in through a lens of humor is also
Yeah.
kind of fun because it helps kind of get some of these messages to digest a little bit better. I think
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of hiding the kale in the smoothie, so to speak. And so yeah, you know, I'm not sure why we are the way we are, but I'll keep trying to figure it out.
I like those references you're using of Paul Thomas Anderson and, of course, director Bong Parasite,
Mm-hmm.
for which he won about 12 Academy Awards.
Yes.
And I mean, you know, and all of these great directors right now, Tarantino, I think,
Yes.
too, and Ari Aster, and you know,
Love
I mean,
Ari.
there's a whole slew of them. I mean, it's a golden age for
It really is.
this kind of filmmaker now, getting these chances.
I mean, I just watched Beau is Afraid recently, and you know, to me, it's his best work, and it's such an insane movie. It's absolutely crazy, and the fact that he got to make that, you know, with Joaquin and with such a strong budget,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it's incredible, like the stuff that's getting made today, and director Bong, I'm just, you know, every single movie he puts out, I'm just at the, you know, for opening day, I want to be there. You know, Mother is my favorite film of his. I think
That's great. You
it's
know,
a perfect film.
his
Yeah.
stuff. You know, everyone's seen Parasite, but they should take a look at some of these
Oh
other
yeah,
movies. that he
Memories of
made.
Murder. Yeah. But
But if you look at Parasite and you look at the structure of that, it is very funny and
Mhm.
it's lighthearted in the beginning, and then it just it goes like beef. You know, it goes
Yes.
into unexpected directions.
it does. I mean, that ending is truly bonkers. And we did, you know, when we had the writers' room, I created like this letterbox playlist, and a lot of Bong's films were on there. We really talked a lot about like, yeah, why does that work in Parasite, but then in other movies it doesn't work, and
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know the exact answer, but it's fun to kind of debate and dissect these films because yeah, there's something about the way Bong executes his story structures that you don't repel when it goes crazy, whereas other filmmakers you'll be like, oh, they went off the rails, you know?
Right. Yeah. Some people said you went off the rails. Do you listen to critics? I'm sure you
I
have heard that.
I have heard that. I definitely have heard that. And I mean, they're correct. We did go off the rails. I mean, that was very intentional. We wanted to not be on the rails for episode 9 and 10. So yeah, I think, you know, for me, it's fun to hear everyone's, you know, praises and criticisms because you know, it's my first thing. I'm still trying to get better. And there's some things that I would love to do differently in the show too. But I still would go off the rails if I got to do it again. But yeah, I think there's always things to improve upon. So yeah, I love reading like all the reviews and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do.
I do. Yeah, I probably spend a little too much time being online.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's
Yeah.
some people that just will not go and read anything for fear of being influenced by it.
I try not to. I like delete like Twitter and I delete Instagram and then I just re-download. So it's this stupid dance that I do all day long.
Yeah. I never read comments to my stories. Not. I do. But and they're all idiots. But no, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, everyone's reacting from a certain place. Doesn't mean that they're right or wrong, you
Yeah.
know, but I'm very like curious about why certain people like even with Barbie and Oppenheimer, you know, the reaction to it is so, you know, like visceral. Like people love both movies and, you know, they're great movies, but I'm very curious as why like people react so strongly to those movies versus others, and even though other movies are just as good. And so I really like the psychology of the viewer is something that I love to think about. And we talk a lot about that in the Beef Room. We actually have a column in our like spreadsheets called like audience emotion, and we like kind of pretend to be different like archetypes of audiences,
Oh, that's interesting.
and like we kind of like almost mime and play how we're reacting to each story beat, being like, you know, oh man, George, like, why did George do that? You know, and so we do that for every scene, and it helps us kind of get out of ourselves as writers and try to view this story through as many different types of lenses as we can. And sometimes that changes what we landed on, and sometimes it doesn't, but it's just like a fun exercise to do.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about Barbie and Oppenheimer that sets them apart is they're original.
Yes.
And audiences have been so preconditioned in the last few decades, actually, of sequels and the same thing and things they're comfortable with. And then they see two things that break through the zeitgeist and don't have a 2 or a 3 or a 4 at the end of their titles.
Yes. Yeah, it's very exciting. I really do hope that it's a sign of you know, a new chapter to come.
Well, it takes filmmakers and creators like you to get in there and get people to listen to you and
thanks.
And let you do this.
I hope so. Yeah, I definitely want to. I've been noodling, you know, pre-strike. Like there are a couple things that I wanted to write and direct. So hopefully, you know, when the strike ends, I'd love to, you know, dip my toe in the feature world, and yeah, I'd love to keep making original things.
Now, I want to get back to directing for a second too, because you waited until the last episode to direct in this, and that became your very first gig. Were you waiting to watch what other directors were going to do and then want to put your own stamp on it before the show ended? Or what was the reasoning of suddenly you are a director in the finale?
I mean, I wanted to direct more, but it was just a time thing, you know. Not all the scripts were done as we were heading into production, and I was just underwater every day. And so it was really the network and studio being like, maybe you should wait till the end. And they were right. There was no way I could have written and finished some of the scripts had I been also like prepping episodes as a director.
Right.
And it was really nice to sit back and watch, you know, again, Jake Schreier and Hikari do their thing, and you know, have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't work for the show by the time we reach the finale. So yeah, I'm really glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting times. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you so much.
You can tell by looking at Beef, you're a unique talent, and the way you got to it is not the obvious way, too. I mean, you're finding your voice is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it took a minute. I think something I like to say is that, you know, early on in, I think, so many of our careers, you're kind of copying and mimicking.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, what can I say or do to get more success? And it really took a long time for me to just, even in my like daily life, be comfortable in my own skin. And I think that's when my writing started to reflect who I am more.
Yeah.
And it took me like 15 years, but I do like hope that, you know, young writers, when they start, like, it really is just a matter of being yourself, because you are like wholly unique. There's no other person like you. And so who else could have your interpretation of an event? So it really makes no sense to try and be like someone else, I don't think.
Right.
And it took me, I think, a long time to realize that, but I'm starting to get that now, and so I'm excited to kind of lean into that a little more.
Very cool. Well, keep finding your voice, and
thank you.
Keep showing us what you got next. It's great. Lee Sung-jin, aka Sunny. Thanks for joining us on Behind the Lens.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.